The House will please come to order. Good morning, members. Welcome to the 17th day of the 66th Legislature's budget session. Pleased to have you all here. If you please join Father Thomas Cronkleton for our prayer.
Let us pray. Lord God, King David is said to have written the Psalms as hymns of supplication and praise. Others throughout the Old and New Testament sing canticles to proclaim faith and gratitude. There is also an ancient aphorism which says, "Those who sing well pray twice." A little later this morning, the Laramie High Chamber Orchestra will fill this hall with lyrical notes. Music shows us that multiple voices can provide harmony and achieve fuller resonance with much more complete expression. Music also demonstrates that dissonance, the tensions of disharmony, can find its resolution in concordance. On this last day for the House to consider bills from the Senate, be with us and grant us your divine assistance so that our different voices may find harmony and any discordance may find resolution. In the work we do today, may we sing well and pray twice. We ask this in all things in your holy name. Amen.
All right, members, let's actually go with a privilege of the floor, and it's nice to see Representative Simpson back in the House. So, Representative Simpson, you have a privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the privilege. Folks in the North Gallery, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine, lives down the street from me in Afton, Michael Horn, and his sons and friends, Soren and Truman and Christoph. Please welcome them.
Welcome to the House. Glad you're here with us. All right, roll call.
Convening roll for the 17th day, Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly.
Here.
Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Excused. Hallinan. Haroldson. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn excused. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Simpson. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson.
Here.
Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Blackburn. Mr. Speaker, 58 present, 2 excused.
Thank you very much. So members, in just a little while, as you have heard in the Father Cronkleton's prayer, we're going to have some musicians here. And it used to be something we did more routinely. We haven't done it much, I think, any last session, and maybe once this session. So the good Senator Rothfuss's son is in a orchestra from chamber orchestra from Laramie, so they're performing in the Senate chamber right now, and then they'll come down here. But we're going to get underway with some business as we await them. There'll be a little bit of setup time, have a few notes, melody, and harmonious beginning of our day, and then we'll continue our work. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 7th, 2022 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Provenza and Haroldson.
Messages from the Senate.
Message 240. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below failed to pass the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. House Bill 54, State Parks Recreation Management Authority. Ayes 14, noes 15, excused 1. Message 244. Mr. Speaker, the Senate adopted the Committee of the Whole report, failing the bill listed below by the vote indicated. House Bill 85, Child Endangering, Controlled Substance Use While Pregnant. Ayes 8, 17, noes 17, excused 5. This bill has been indefinitely postponed. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Thank you. So members, as we're awaiting our morning entertainment, the Chief Clerk is going to distribute the list for requests to concur. There are 6 bills on that list, so that'll be sent out now. And I apologize, we would be taking those up now, but we didn't get that distributed, so there'll be 6 concurrences. It's on House Bill 55, 56, 123, House Bill 3, 49, and 117. As I said, that list will come around. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take up second reading. Second reading. There are no amendments, at least on my list. There are no amendments to any of the second reading bills. So we'll go through second reading, and if our guests are here by then, we will stop, and if they're not, we'll make a decision on where we go next. We may go to the consent list on third reading, and then we'll take up concurrences last. Again, I apologize, we didn't get that distributed to you, so you know exactly where we're with concurrences. So you'll have time to prepare for that. We're now at that order of business of bills on second reading. First bill for our consideration, Senate File 3.
Senate File 3, sponsored by Transportation, Radioactive Materials Transport Fee, an act relating to commercial vehicle fees.
Senate File 3, having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, so ordered. Next, Senate File 8.
Senate File 8, sponsored by Agriculture, Weed and Pest Reorganization, an act relating to weed and pest control.
Senate File 8, having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next, Senate File 11.
Senate File 11, sponsored by Senator Anderson, display of state flag, an act relating to a state flag.
Senate File 11, having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next, Senate File 41.
Senate File 41, sponsored by Senator Cost, expanding Next Generation 911, an act relating to the administration of government.
Senate File 41, having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, is so ordered. Next, Senate File 43.
Senate File 43, sponsored by Senator Wasserberger, Community College District elections. An act relating to community college district elections.
Senate File 43 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next, Senate File 53.
Senate File 53, sponsored by Senator Nethercott, Local Government Liability Pool Amendments. An act relating to the Local Government Insurance Program.
Senate File 53 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Senate File 73.
Senate File 73, sponsored by Management Audit, codifying the Institutional Land Fund, an act relating to public funds.
Senate File 73 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next, Senate File 77.
Senate File 77, sponsored by Senator Ellis, name change, duration of residency requirement, an act relating to petitions for name changes.
Senate File 77 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Senate File 80.
Senate File 80, sponsored by Water, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, an act relating to water development projects.
Senate File 80 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Senate File 81.
Senate File 81, sponsored by Senator Hicks, clarification of existing state ownership of groundwater, an act relating to water.
Senate File 81 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Senate File 101.
Senate File 101, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss, Ephedrine and Naxaline Administration Authority, an act relating to public health and safety.
Senate File 101 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Senate File 102.
Senate File 102, sponsored by Senator Hicks, Second Amendment Protection Act, an act relating to the regulation of firearms and the protection of constitutional rights.
Senate File 102 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it's so ordered. I think we just do consent. Don't you think? It's going to take long. All right, members, we're just going to go to the consent list. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Third reading consent list, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the third reading consent list consisting of the following bills: Senate File 10, 19, 26, 27, 32, 38, 47, and 48.
Would any member like a bill removed from the consent list? Any member a bill from the consent list? Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remove Senate File 47.
47 is removed from the consent list. Any other member like a bill removed from the consent list? Bill removed from the consent list. Seeing none, the consent list now consists of 10 Senate Files 10, 19, 26, 27, 32, 38, and 48. Reading clerk, please read the consent list.
Senate File 10, sponsored by Agriculture, Predator Control, an act relating to agriculture, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 19, sponsored by Revenue, County Optional Property Tax Refund Program, an act relating to taxation and revenue, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 26, sponsored by Judiciary, District Judge Positions, Authorizing and Funding, an act relating to the judiciary, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 27, sponsored by Judiciary, Dissolution of County Boards Authority, an act relating to counties, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 32, sponsored by Education, K-3 Reading Assessment and Intervention Program, an act relating to reading assessment and intervention, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 38, sponsored by Revenue, Monthly ad valorem tax revisions, an act relating to ad valorem taxation of mineral production, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 48, sponsored by Natural Resource Finding, 2022 Large Project Funding, an act relating to the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Funding Act, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Having been read three separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll on the consent list.
Roll call on the consent list. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly.
Aye.
Prego. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn excused. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Worf. Williams. Wilson.
Aye.
Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker, we have 58 ayes, 2 are excused. As for Senate File 10, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 58 aye, 2 excused. As for Senate File 19, are there any changes? Flitner, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Blackburn, aye to no. Summers, aye to no. Haroldson, aye to no. Ottman, aye to no. Mr. Speaker, aye to no. Further changes? Wilson, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 50 aye, 8 no, 2 excused. As for Senate File 26, are there any changes? Gray, aye to no. Jennings, aye to no. Stivar, aye to no. Burt, aye to no. Fortner, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 52 aye, 6 no, 2 excused. As for Senate File 27, are there any changes? Oakley, aye to no. Summers, aye to no. Crago, aye to no. Banks, aye to no. Schwartz, aye to no. Nicholas, aye to no. Roscoe, aye to no. Clausen, aye to no. Mr. Speaker, aye to no. Further changes? Henderson, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 48 aye, 10 no, 2 excused. As for Senate File 32, are there any changes? Flitner, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 57 aye, 1 no, 2 excused. As for Senate File 38, are there any changes? Gray, aye to no. Burt, aye to no. Stivar, aye to no. Further changes? Haroldson, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 53 aye, 5 no, 2 excused. And as for House Bill 48, or Senate File 48, are there any changes? Gray, aye to no. Knapp, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Hallinan, aye to no. Larson Dan, aye to no. Bear, aye to no. Fortner, aye to no. Baker, aye to no. Jennings, aye to no. Stivar, aye to no. Rodriguez Williams, aye to no. Burt, aye to no. Blackburn, aye to no. Haroldson, aye to no. Clausen, aye to no. Ottman, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 42 aye, 16 no, 2 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 10, 19, 26, 27, 32, 38, and 48 have passed the House. We have one bill on regular list, and we have no amendments. No amendments. It was removed, but I don't see any amendments coming. So Senate File 47 being read 3 separate times. We'll just hold still for a bit. We make sure we don't have an amendment. So members, it looks like our musical guests are coming, so we'll take up third reading on Senate File 47 as soon as our musical guests depart. So we'll just stand at ease until we get our guests in the chamber. So stand at ease till the sound of the gavel, and thank you for your patience. So when we come back, it'll be Senate File 47, third reading, and then we're going to go directly to concurrences. Joint concurrences, request for concurrence.
Yeah, so see now, it ain't gonna work. Go ahead and turn it off real quick. Hello, 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 hello. Well, no, turn it so I can hear me talk. Hello, 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 hello. You don't see any volume? Yeah, I see the volume. Let me see the camera. Hello, camera. Hello, camera. Hello, camera.
The House will please come to order. This morning we have a special performance from the Laramie High School's Chamber Orchestra. This group will be playing three pieces: Prayer for Ukraine, The Enchanted Castle, and a fiddle tune entitled Molly on the Shore. The director is Jennifer Lyford. Representatives, please help me welcome these talented students to the House. Conductor Lyford, the floor is yours.
I need to use something.
Test, test. It's working, but it's not working very good.
All right, I'm not a fan of microphones, but I was told I must use one. So thank you so much for inviting us here today. I meant to thank Senator Rothfuss also. Of course, we have another Rothfuss in the House right here, so I think he's a little bit biased. But we're so thrilled to be here again. We were here 2 years ago, and it was a wonderful opportunity for our students. Of course, last year was an interesting year for all. So we're just so glad to be back and performing again. And the last piece you heard, as you know, was the prayer for Ukraine. You may have heard it recently, of course. I think the music speaks for itself. It's a very beautiful piece. I encourage you to look up the words of the translation online. It's a really wonderful piece. The next piece we're going to play for you is called The Enchanted Castle. It's a piece we actually played at our Halloween concert because it's hauntingly beautiful. And we thought we'd bring it to you because maybe this isn't an enchanted castle, but maybe it's an enchanted capital. So we hope you work some magic here.
It on. The next piece we're going to play is Molly on the Shore. It is arranged by Percy Granger. It is a Irish folk tune, and it'll get your blood moving again. And some of these kids actually were able to tour Ireland pre-COVID. We did have a orchestra tour in Ireland, and it was wonderful. And we hope you enjoy Molly on the Shore.
Wow. Started off with touching our hearts and then lift our spirits at the end. Thank you so much, Laramie County High School Chamber Orchestra. So we have a little tradition here. We don't try to enter out the back door. We go right down the main aisle. So half of you students, if you just pick up your stands and go out there and we'll clap you out. Half of you go out that way. Thank you for being here. Continued luck with your studies. All right, members, thank you. That was quite a treat. I forgot to introduce the young gentleman sitting down at the far end was Senator Rothfuss's son, and I apologize I didn't get him introduced. So members, with that order of business of continuing bills on third reading, Senate File 47, reading clerk.
Senate File 47, sponsored by Minerals, Carbon Storage and Sequestration Liability, an act relating to geological sequestration of carbon dioxide, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Okay, so maybe we have another amendment coming, so we'll just stand at ease just for a moment. We do have third reading amendment number 1, which is Representative Gray, but maybe there's another one coming. So members, we're just going to stand at ease for a moment. We're awaiting a member to return so we understand if he's going to bring an amendment or not. So members, we are waiting for amendment to be prepared right now, so I apologize that I was not aware of that before we read the bill, and we can't take any other, there's a motion on the floor. We can take a personal privilege if we would like. So Representative Sweeney, did you want to bring forth a personal privilege? Would you do that now, please?
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
So, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this morning, after hearing the moving tributes, both to Ukraine and the last, next to the last song being Ireland, perfect lead-in for a joint resolution which reads, which I hope you'll all sign on to, commemorates the celebration of St. Patrick's Day. Of course, you know, having the first name of Patrick, I obviously have great interest in this. So the resolution reads, whereas on March 17th, during the annual celebration of the Feast of St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, Irish Americans join with men, women, and children of all other ethnic origins who, for one day, become Irish and celebrate St. Patrick's and the love of Ireland. And whereas on St. Patrick's Day, all who wear the green, which I didn't do today, but the green, live for a day in the spirit of Saint Patrick, Bridget, and Columcille, whose 1500th anniversary was in the last year. And whereas Irish immigrants to the United States helped form the cultural foundation of the nation, and those of Irish lineage today proudly sing support for Ireland. And whereas we celebrate the establishment of the American Irish State Legislators Caucus with its aim of fostering and strengthening the long-standing relationship that exists between the United States of America and Ireland to the mutual benefit of both countries with leadership in all 50 states. And whereas the songs of Ireland are the tragic songs of love and the joyous songs of battle, the nostalgic reveries of the sorrows and glories that are the Emerald Island, and the lamentations of life's myriad trivials and the odes to joy and life eternal. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the undersigned members of the 66th Legislature of the state of Wyoming, and we commemorate the celebration of the Feast of St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. Be it further resolved that a duly certified copy of this resolution be transmitted to Senator Mark Daly, Chair of the Senate of Ireland, which on this year celebrates its 100th anniversary, and the national co-chairs of the American Irish State Legislators Caucus, Speaker Robin Vos of Wisconsin, Assemblywoman Carol Murphy of New Jersey, Representative Killian Timothy of Kentucky, Representative Fran Hurley of Illinois, Senator Shannon O'Brien of Montana, and Senator Mia Costello of Alaska. And with that, since we don't have a page, I'll have this at my desk and try to sign, have all of you sign it, and then send it over to the Senate. So with that, happy St. Patrick's Day, Aaron Gobraw.
Thank you, Representative Sweeney. So members, because we are awaiting an amendment, what I've asked the Majority Floor Leader to do is just make it official that we're going to just basically postpone it to a definite time, i.e. when the amendment gets here, and we're going to continue with our concurrences. We're going to go on to concurrences, so we don't suck up a bunch of time waiting. So Mr. Majority Floor Leader. So, members, this is just to delay the consideration until the amendment is prepared and presented to the body. We're not ditching the bill. We're not doing anything. It's just preparation of the amendment by our staff. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move to delay third reading on Senate File 47 until the amendment is available to the body.
All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Thank you. The Senate File 47 will be delayed until the amendment is available. Next order of business is bills, requests to concur. You should have had I'm told it's pink. It could be another color, but it's of this hue. I only had 8 crayons in my Crayola box, 8 colors. So I don't know what color this is. So we have request to concur with Senate amendments to House bills. The first House bill is 55. This is message 232. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message number 232 and ask for your favorable concurrence on House Bill 55, liquor licenses, airport exemption. Our good friends down the hall, when looking through the statute, realized the "and" was not, it was in the second place in a series instead of the third place in a series of 4. And so you'll see they did basically a technical correction and replaced the word "and" in Romanet 2 with "and" in Romanet 3. And there are a series of, there's a 4th in this statute as well. So simple cleanup to make the law read better. Would ask for your favorable agreement.
Discussion on message 232 on House Bill 55. Discussion. Seeing none, members, we are voting on a motion to concur with amendments to House Bill 55. A majority of the elected members required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly,
Aye.
Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer excused, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn excused, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Worf, Williams, Wilson,
No.
Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker, Stith, closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 44 aye, 14 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 55. Next message is 233, House Bill 56. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move message 233 to House Bill 56, examination of books of certain districts and entities. This is a pretty simple change our good friend caught down the hall. It's a little complicated in nature because it deals with our UMFIP statutes, the Uniform Municipal Fiscal Procedures Act. And so those of you who are here will remember 4 or 5 years ago. I can't even remember which year it was. We really took a holistic look about how we go through certain districts and entities and have our State Department of Audit have some requirements on looking at their books due to certain accounting standards and in line with how large those municipalities are or how large those special districts are, kind of the greater either number of participants or the greater financial thresholds of a certain district or city get greater scrutiny is a good way to look at it. The interesting thing in this act is the way we define the word municipality. And so we're going back to defining municipality as it's found in 16.4.102A14, which is weird if you read it because we actually define municipality for auditing standards as any city over 4,000 people, but we also defined every county, school district, and community college district as a municipality for our auditing purposes. So if you've tracked this amendment in and you've scratched your head like I don't quite understand what they're doing, it all falls under Uniform Municipal Fiscal Procedures, but we treat all of those districts I just named under the same auditing rules. And so that's why the definition you'll see on page 4, we're defining a municipality by those auditing rules, even though more than a municipality is covered in there. So I know that's a little complicated, but if you have any questions, happy to point you to the statute. But it is a good cleanup brought by actually the association that oversees municipalities when they were reading through the statute saying we had a technical fix we needed to put in the statute. Ask for I vote.
Discussion on the concurrence. Discussion on the concurrence. Discussion. Members, we are voting on a motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 56. Majority of the elected members required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly.
Aye.
Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer excused, Hallinan. Repeat, please. Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn excused, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams. Repeat, please. Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washut, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson,
Aye.
Winter, Yin, Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 57 aye, 1 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 56. Next House Bill is 123. Vice Chair Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move concurrence request number 239 for House Bill 123. Body, basically the other end, they just tightened it up a little bit, changed the long title to reflect the changes, did some conforming amendments, and did a little bit more defining on inert material. And so our speaker is the sponsor, and he said, vote aye.
Any discussion on the message? Discussion on the message? Discussion on the message. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make sure there was no bringing in the turbine language that was in the original bill and that kept it to the disposal of the inert material, the tire issue that we're trying to address here.
Thank you. Any other members? Any other members first time? Representative Duncan, Vice Chair Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Actually, if you look on the very first part of the amendment, it actually strikes out on the first page, line 4, all of the language saying the disposal of decommissioned wind turbine blades and towers in surface coal mines. So it completely scratches all of that out.
Further discussion? Thank you. So members, we are voting on concurrence with Senate amendments to House Bill 123. Majority of the elected members required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly.
Aye.
Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn excused. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Worf. Williams. Wilson.
Aye.
Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 56 aye, 2 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 123. The next message is 241 on House Bill 3, Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Speaker, I move message 241 and would ask for an aye vote to concur with the changes made by the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, this is House Bill 3, State Land Leases. To refresh your memories a little bit, it is concerning some changes that we're making or some clarifications we're making for state lands concerning vacant lands and how they would be dealt with and leased out or whatever. So as you can imagine, I think I said this before, we're not going to make every side happy. As far as I can see, people were brought to the table, including the chief executive, trying to come up with language and word crafting that isn't going to be perfect, but it's as close as we can probably come. And I would ask for an aye vote. The changes on page 2, line 18, after lands, insert unless the board determines that the preference should not be given for good cause. And then a couple other minor changes, I think. But all in all, the bill is real similar to the way it left the House, and I would ask for an aye vote, and I'm open for discussion.
Discussion on the amendment. Majority Floor Leader Summers on the concurrence request.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I appreciate the good chairman bringing this. You know, one, I don't understand what good cause is, and two, you know, does this begin to erode really the longstanding term of preference on state land leases? So are we beginning that erosion process of standing? And if we're not going to do this according to preference, and it's for good cause by a group of electeds to determine that, maybe that's right, maybe it's wrong, but are we beginning to erode the right of preference on and against?
Any other members? First time on the concurrence? First time on concurrence? First time seeing none. Chairman Eklund, if you'd like to close this out.
Yeah, so I
Mr.
guess I would-
Chairman?
I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, I've only been here 12 years. You expect me to remember all these things? Thank you for reminding me. Yes. So we have a couple of words, and I don't know what, given for good cause, that does sound like attorney fodder, so somebody else would have to address that, but it is in statute in other places. We have two different words that we need to clarify. Preference in this case has to do with the vacant lands. If it's a preferred right, which is also in statute concerning state lands, then we have an established process that we're not altering at all. What we don't have is an established process for lands that have been vacated by leasees. And as close as we can, we're trying to give state lands, the State Lands Office and the people that make these decisions, the clearest pathway to leasing these grounds. And I'm hoping this doesn't erode a process. The state lands have been, the trust lands have been well taken care of over the years that we've had them, and I hope that this would strengthen what we're doing. We have 70 to 100 vacant lands. I'm surprised at that number, but it would be good to get our rules clear so that the Office of State Lands can get those leases out and start generating some income for the state of Wyoming, and I hope that this bill will do that. If we run into some problems, as we've already run into some problems is the reason the bill was brought, but if we do run into further problems, we'll be here next year.
Thank you. So members, we are voting on a motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 3. Majority of the elected members required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly.
Aye.
Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan. Repeat, please. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn excused. Olson. Ottman. Repeat. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson.
Aye.
Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Blackburn, aye to no. Burkhart, aye to no. Larson Lloyd, aye to no. Banks, aye to no. Baker, aye to no. Oakley, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 15 aye, 43 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you voted not to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 3. Next message, 242, House Bill 49, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move message 242 to House Bill 49, election reporting requirements, and I will ask you to vote aye. As you can see in front of you, it is a little bit extensive, but it's really about 4 parts. And so let me try to break it down into 4 parts. And if you have questions, certainly let me know. So again, and I'll just go right through the concurrence with you in front of you. That First Amendment you can see was adopted. This is the same language we passed in a bill I think I discussed yesterday with this $500 fine per day that the Secretary of State can impose. And in the other piece of legislation which went through, we're just mirroring that legislation, that up to $500 a day discretion based on who the actor or organization is. And there were some questions yesterday, if I could take a small tangent, how the Secretary of State just subjectively would pick that fine, but I do believe they're planning on categorizing it if it's a state legislative level, if it's a political party, if it's an outside, they would have basic ranges they would operate in. So that's the first part. The second part, on page 14, line 18, you're seeing we're giving a little bit of latitude, and this is in the part of statute where we're dealing with local elections. So this is your county clerk and your county attorney and people who are running for city or local offices. So your city council, your school board, your county commission boards, and any political action committees that are formed for a local initiative or referenda. And so if they are violating our election reporting requirements and the county attorney is going to issue a fine, basically, we're just including this language, which is probably what the county attorney would do anyway, but that the county attorney should give due consideration to why that person failed to follow. Did they know the law? Are they purposely trying to avoid it? Or, how significant is the infraction based on either willful intent or negligence, and allowing that county prosecutor to take that information into account when finding a local city council candidate or a local PAC. So that's the second part. The third part gets a little interesting, and that's really all of the bottom of page 1 and all of page 2. What we had, and it was this kind of ongoing conversation, you'll see they basically deleted 3 pages of the bill and rewrote it there on the top of your concurrence committee, page 2, with a word, and the key word is organization. And so instead of saying these are political parties and PACs and interest groups and candidate committees, basically we're taking a very large umbrella, no matter what you call it, this entity that's pouring money into an independent expenditure, an electioneering communication. We're just going to call them organizations, in-state, out-of-state, etc. And then they did actually add some qualifying language and go a little further than the original intent of the bill. You'll see on Romanettes 1 and 2 that now you have to have the name and the address of not only the chairman, but also the treasurer of that organization, whatever it is, so you can tie it back to a real person. So again, a lot of these electioneering communications or independent expenditures aren't nefarious in nature per se, right? They're all designed to promote or, promote for or against a certain candidate or initiative. So really, we're just trying to put some transparency in where that money and that support for or against is coming from. So then when you go further down to the bottom of page 2, we had to kind of go back in the second part and clean up. When we said organization is this big umbrella, well, there's still certain things that are subject differently internally, really, from an organization to what we require of across the board, really, right now for parties, PACs, and your personal candidate campaign committee. So you'll see they had to delete the word organization some parts and then re-clarify that when we're talking about other sections of the statute, and I'm happy to go into those if you'd like, organizations don't actually mean political parties, PACs, or your personal campaign committee, because they are subject to different requirements when it comes to filing. So I know that's a little holistic, but I have checked with all the entities that regulate this, with our good office that oversees elections, went through with our good friends down the hall, kind of how this whole process worked on this ever-evolving way to make the bill better. I do believe it's good and worthy of concurrence, and would ask you to vote aye.
Discussion on the concurrence request. Discussion on the concurrence request. Discussion, seeing none. Members, we are voting on a motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 49. Chief Clerk, please, a majority of the members elected is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer excused, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn excused, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson,
Aye.
Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote, are there any changes? Blackburn? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 41 aye, 17 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 49. The next message is 243, which is a very fine caliber, to House Bill 117. Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, 243 is good for Antelope. I move message 243 requesting concurrence on House Bill 117 and ask for your aye vote. Folks, this is the Occupational Therapy Compact. Essentially, there were some cleanups of things that really we ought to have caught on our end, making sure to get the background check information in all the places. But Mr. Speaker, if I could, I'm a little handicapped by not having my paper bill here. I'd like to turn over further explanation to the bill sponsor from Sheridan if there are more questions.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Representative Kinner, on the concurrence, message 243.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I would encourage your aye vote too. The good folks down the hall did help us as hard as we tried to get it right before it left this body. The state board actually brought a couple of things to us, and so we did make a clarifying amendment which refused some confusing language, quite honestly. And then we did add 2 sections that relate to criminal history background checks, which apply to those folks who are applying for compact privileges under this. And with that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Further discussion on the motion to concur. Further discussion? Seeing none. Members, we are voting a motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 117. Majority of the elected members is required. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly.
Aye.
Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer excused, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan. Repeat, please. LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn excused, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson,
Aye.
Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Larson Dan, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 52 aye, 6 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 117. Conference Committee on House Bill 3, Craigo, Summers, Eklund, Chairman. All right, members, we're still awaiting the preparation of the amendment. So, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into committee of the whole for a couple bills, then probably go to lunch, and then by then we'll have that amendment, be able to come back in for third reading. And so I'm going to give you my first 10 on committee of the whole. So you have that, and then I'll make the motion. So it'll be Senate File 55, 76, 106, 78, 85, 92, 61, 86, and 100. And Mr. Speaker, I move that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Chairman Burkhart.
House will come to order. First bill for consideration is it's somewhere. Okay. Senate File 55. Reading clerk, please read the bill.
Senate File 55, sponsored by Blockchain, Insurance Sandbox, an act relating to insurance. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom's referred Senate File 55 engrossed, Insurance Sandbox, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Blackburn, Burt, Duncan, Ayer, LeBeau, Roscoe. Noes, Representatives Clausen, McGuire, Zwanitzer. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 55 do pass, and I will explain the bill. Just because I know we're still waking up, I thought...
Point of order.
Chairman Zwanitzer, what's your point?
Hey, thank you. Since we're still waking up, this bill went to my committee, and I should probably present the motion. Then I'll turn it over to the good chairman of judiciary after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're all still waking up.
As am I. I apologize. Chairman Swanitzer, please start over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the committee of the whole rise to report to do so with the recommendation that Senate File 55 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I would turn it over to the good chairman of judiciary, and I will get him a cup of coffee.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Olson, finally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my favorite chairman. Oh, all right. All my chairmen are my favorite chairman. So I bring you Senate File 55. This is the insurance sandbox bill, and I'll talk about just a few changes that were made over in the Senate, but otherwise it's a pretty clean bill. What this is, just to give you a little bit of background, if you're familiar with sandboxes, we have in Wyoming passed 2 sandboxes, a medical technology sandbox and a financial technology sandbox. Insurance, no different than medical or banking or whatever industry, finds itself at a crossroad, not unlike any other industry. That crossroad hinges on technology. We all have to be aware and agile when it comes to technology if we are to succeed, if our businesses are to succeed. That's what this bill attempts to address. It allows InsurTech to explore and test unique innovations in a controlled environment. The environment is the sandbox. This is what the bill does. First, it allows an insurance company to apply to the commissioner who oversees the department that regulates in our state all insurance, and it allows them to apply for exemptions. There's a list of exemptions in the bill. What is important to note is a sandbox is not intended to exempt you from the entire insurance code. If that were the purpose of the bill, it would just delete the insurance code. The purpose of the bill is to allow that company to apply for exemptions. They find the areas in the code that are prohibiting their business from testing something that is new and unique, and they ask for a waiver on whatever that may be. They have to specifically apply what in detail they need exempted and why they couldn't otherwise succeed. Then what they get is a pilot or trial period for up to 24 months to test their product, to test their idea in this controlled environment. They can apply for an additional 12 months after the 24 months have been granted, but that's the cap. At that point in time, what we hope to have found is that if there are multiple businesses applying under the same exemption, that maybe we ought to come and take a hard look at whatever that regulation is that is stagnant on businesses. Okay, so that's it. Insurance company comes in, they apply, they seek exemption, they test their innovative idea, and they hope to be successful and provide a product for Wyoming. In doing that inside the sandbox, it balances their exemptions with consumer protection. This bill has a lot of consumer protection built into it. For example, committee on page 10, this is a very important consumer protection provision. Subsection E says no waiver. No waiver element of a waiver shall be granted under this chapter if the waiver element would jeopardize the state's NAIC accreditation or would violate any requirements associated with the NAIC accreditation. This was sought after, this exact provision, by the department that regulates insurance. I think it's a really well put together consumer protection provision. The other one, which I think you will appreciate, committee, is on page 11, and it is subsection C. This is also important. A business entity making an application under this section shall be licensed domestic company or other licensed organized domestic entity with a physical presence here in Wyoming. So the idea is just that, to create Wyoming companies, brick and mortar companies, people here, jobs here, not to allow actors outside of the state of Wyoming to avail themselves of our laws to the detriment of our citizens. Other consumer protection provisions in here include disclosures of who, what they're seeking. This has to go up on the insurance website. Full background checks are disclosed to the commissioner. The commissioner must be made fully aware of any person who's applying in the application who has any fraud, state or federal insurance violations in their record. It requires, last two pieces, and these are the changes from the Senate, a bond and a fee. The fee is $5,000. The Senate increased that fee. It's probably not enough. You could probably go higher. We're talking about really big companies. That fee is intended to generate the bank account necessary for the administration of this good bill. And then they must also post a $100,000 bond in case they get into any trouble. Allows the commissioner to recoup anything necessary from that trouble, which we hope doesn't occur, committee. And then an account is created in this bill, the last little piece, which is what I spoke about, and it's intended to self-fund itself through time, those applications. And, you know, as we walk through it, certainly if more administration is necessary, that fee is definitely something I think this legislature could address down the future. Again, these are really big companies, so a $5,000 fee to the state of Wyoming is honestly pretty minimal. That's the bill. Of course, it is, I could go into more detail depending on the questions, but that is the gist of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will take any questions.
Questions for the good presenter? Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I get a cup of coffee, I just had a couple of questions on the page 15 where it's talking about the protection regarding a bond of 100,000. That seems kind of small. I like the concept. I support the concept. I'd like to get a few more words, if you would, on how we're going to protect these folks. Maybe a later amendment to increase that bond.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that it might be a point of order question, but this bill does include an appropriation of $500,000 of special revenue, and it was not re-referred to the committee number 2. That shows up in section 2 on page 25, and so I think it needs to be re-referred to committee number 2 prior to further action, Mr. Chairman.
Who's the bill?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, could I request a
Yeah.
Rules Committee on that real quick?
Chairman Zwanitzer?
Could I request a Rules Committee meet to have a finding on that latest point of order?
Yes.
Thanks.
So the Rules Committee will approach the desk. House will come back to order, please. Okay. Chairman Zwana, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members of the House, please come back to order.
I move to suspend the rules, specifically suspend Rule 4-8A, which is our rule requiring a bill be sent to appropriations, and have Senate File 55 immediately referred to Committee of the Whole.
Okay. You've heard the motion. This is a roll call vote, and it takes 2/3 majority to suspend the rules. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly.
Aye.
Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn excused. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson.
No.
Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Provenza, no to aye. Kenner, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Wilson, are you wanting to change your vote? Okay. Closing vote. The vote is closed. 35 aye, 23 no, 2 excused.
By your vote, you've voted to not suspend the rules. And so stand at ease for a minute. House will come back to order. Based on your prior vote to not suspend Rule 4-7, Senate File 55 is referred back to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the House rise and report. Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Okay, opposed, no. Okay, so do we do committee announcements? Committee announcements? Okay, so committee announcements, I will do the first one. Joint Conference Committee on Senate File 35 will meet soon, as soon as our counterparts on the other side recess in W110. Okay.
Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your
Speaker.
Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 55, referred to Committee Number 7. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Committee of the Whole, I move adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Committee of the Whole report is adopted. All right, members. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move to re-refer Senate File 55 to Committee Number 2, Appropriations.
Without objection, is so ordered. Committee Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move that the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Committee announcements. Committee announcements. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you. Your House Appropriations will take up the re-referral of Senate File 55 at 1 o'clock. I've got to run an errand, so 1 o'clock and upstairs.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Joint Conference Committee Number 1 on Senate File 35 will meet in about 15 minutes in W110.
Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock with our Light Committee from the Senate in our room 3 to consider interim topics.
Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee Number 4, Education, will meet tomorrow at 8:30 in room 110 with our counterparts to discuss interim topics.
Further announcements. Further announcements. Members, the Joint Conference Committee Number 1 on House Bill 100, Legislative Redistricting, will continue meeting. Next meeting will be at 1 o'clock this afternoon, 1 p.m. Further discussion, further announcements. The House will stand in recess until 2 p.m.